at 76.48, up about 0.5%. There was a significant sort of downward draft in the markets last week where Brent pushed below $80 a barrel for the first time this year, or since very early in the year, since we've had that steady decline since early November when OPEC Plus made the decision to trigger the output cut of 2 million barrels a day, and since then it's been a very downward move. To a great extent, there's been a battle all year between supply concerns, ultimately triggered by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and then the battle with demand destruction by the overarching global outlook. As we've gone through the year, the World Bank, amongst other multilateral agencies, have continuously revised downward the outlook for global economic growth. And we seem to end the year where perhaps the demand destruction narrative is trumping the supply concerns. Let's go to Dr. Charles Elinas, CEO of Cyprus Natural Hydrocarbons and Senior Fellow at the Global Energy Center at the Atlantic Council. Dr. Charles, your thoughts as we move now towards the end of the year and moving really deep into the holiday season when everybody gets a little bit distracted. Where do you think the balance is at the moment between those two big forces of the year?
Well, I think the outcome of many different factors is still to come. I mean, we haven't seen any impact from the embargo or the cap on the oil price, and we're not going to see it until early next year, maybe until January, February. In the meanwhile, China is coming out of COVID, and demand in China has actually increased and will be increasing. And I just noticed that the production from OPEC hasn't gone down by the 2 million barrels of oil they promised. It will go down. It still has further to go. So these factors to me indicate that we're going to see the balance changing as we enter the new year, and likely the oil price will start rising by then.
The impact again on this idea of demand destruction versus supply concerns we've seen through the first half of the year. Oil prices in the immediate aftermath of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, oil prices spiked up to 130 on Brent, and then came quite down, and in the second half of the year the trend has been downward, but still on all things relatively high. Vibhuti Garg, Director South Asia at the IEEFA in India, despite these very sort of somewhat elevated oil prices, we saw last month in India, November data showing India's fuel oil demand hits an 8-month peak in November, defying gravity, Vibhuti, in India.
Exactly. I mean, India's... Sorry.
Let me just get Vibhuti on that.
Yeah.
Right. So India is witnessing very high economic growth, and as a result, we are seeing, things going back to pre-COVID levels. So with COVID cases down, so the economy has opened up, and in the last few months, clearly we are seeing, air traffic or the transportation traffic where a lot of oil is used. We are seeing recovery, and that has led to huge substantial growth in oil demand. And as a result, given that India imports more than 80% of its oil needs, our imports have also gone up. But prices going down is a welcome thing for India, because that means our current account deficit, which has gone from bad to worse because of high oil prices.
But does it really, Vibhuti, make any difference to India, given that you're enjoying the Russian discount anyway, and that's pretty much consistent? It hasn't really fluctuated. The Brent benchmark has changed, but the Russian price point hasn't. And so does the adjustment of Brent make any difference to India, seen as you're enjoying the Russian benchmark and not the global benchmark?
It does. I mean, we are importing from other countries as well. So while the share from the Russian oil has gone up, but it's not that our imports from other countries has gone to nil. So they are still big importers, whether it's Saudi Arabia or Iran. They remain one of our big importers. So it definitely helps to offset some amount of increase, but it's not that we are completely kind of protected from any Brent increase in crude oil that we witness. So that's, yeah, as I said, there has been some offset, but not completely.
Charles, the situation in Europe has not been the stress of energy security that we were all sort of fearful of, that Europe would essentially struggle with meeting its power requirements this winter, has not yet been challenged. Only in the last few days that we seem to have finally kind of started a kind of a more Arctic level of winter in Europe. What's your own assessment of the trajectory of winter energy demand in Europe versus its ability to meet that obligation?
Well, I think, as you said, it has just started. I'm now in The Hague, and at this moment, the temperature is -2 degrees. And it has been cold for the whole week, and it's expected to be cold for a while yet. So and it's not just cold. The wind speeds are low in Europe now, and rainfall is not very high. So we get this combination of winter setting in, and production of electricity from wind energy being low, water being low, affecting other forms of energy. So the IEA has warned that if this continues for some time until early next year, Europe may still run a deficit in gas. I mean, there is still a worry. It's not, I mean, so far it has been good because the weather was good until a week ago, and because China was re-exporting its LNG, but China is no longer re-exporting LNG. The winter is setting in, and there is a concern that the storages of gas in Europe will not be sufficient. And of course, the major concern now is what happens next winter, because don't forget that during the first half of this year, Europe benefited from high Russian gas supplies. Those won't be available next year. So if the gas storage is empty because of the harsh winter, how are they going to be filled next year? I mean, there are grave concerns. That's why Europe is unable to find a cap on the gas price, because they are very worried about the potential impact of that in diverting gas from Europe to the United States. And on top of that, we have problems in gas to China. On top of that, we have problems in the United States. Gas production and LNG exports are flat. They have gone down and they're not increasing. Winter in the United States is harsh, which means that gas needs to be used in the States. So the export of LNG from the United States to Europe isn't going to be able to rise to the occasion and fill any gaps. There is concern.
Vibhuti, coming back to the earlier point, as OPEC Plus has recently met and they chose to leave supply unchanged after the big cut announcement in early October. But obviously with Brent now hovering in the mid-70s, and we still don't know how Russia is going to react to this price cap, would OPEC Plus, looking at India, they might be feeling, well, our customers in Asia, particularly one of the biggest, India, is not suffering from these level of prices. So we could come back into curtailing supply and try bring that oil price on Brent back to $90 a barrel. Would that be an accurate reading by OPEC Plus if they look to India and Asia ability to handle $90, given that you're continuing to grow at very high levels?
I think if that's going to be a strategy, that would even further make India increase imports from Russia. Now they are looking at establishing, more kind of long higher capacity vehicles within the two countries. So I think all these kind of reactions would further make India buy more oil from for imports, because clearly there is no alternative to oil as of now. Though, as I discussed even in my last interaction, that India is developing alternatives, whether it's on the transport side or whether it's getting electric cooking to replace LPG. So there are a lot of efforts that are being done in order to reduce overall oil consumption, but that's going to take time. So in the near term, I think any such jerk reactions to curtail more production or to increase prices, India had witnessed $140 as well. They had to buy oil at that price as well, which led to very high current account deficit. A lot of further the impact was in terms of inflation, and this is being witnessed globally in all the countries. The monetary tightening to curb impact of inflation. So I think India is also taking all those steps. And as I said, any such reaction would further increase Russia and India's imports.
I mean, like Vibhuti, a lot of politicians in other parts of the world are suffering from the economic backlash of higher energy prices, inflation, and so on. But Prime Minister Modi doesn't see. He just had a big election success over the weekend. His popularity seems to be holding strong.
Well, that was for one state, but India is going to go into national elections next year in 2024. So definitely these measures will hurt the economy and its popularity if India is not able to manage the prices. So far, they have been, by increasing subsidies to the consumers, whether it is fertilizers or whether it's on LPG, which India reduced or almost the LPG subsidies were close to nil, but then again they have to reintroduce subsidy. So it's a huge subsidy burden to the government. Those are some of the popular measures the government is taking so that the ultimate consumer are not impacted to that extent. But that also means a big drain on their own financial resources. If they are not able to generate enough revenues to kind of meet those kind of expenses, so it is hurting them, and they are looking at various different options to increase revenue, whether it's monetization of their assets or looking at further increase in debt. So all these are not very good signs as far as economic growth is concerned yet.
Charles, we've had on the news over the last week in terms of the price cap and the EU embargo, the result of being as it's called, a tanker traffic jam going into the Bosphorus, out of the Bosphorus. Your thoughts on the outlook for that, and what does it tell you about the dynamics of this price cap and the role of Turkey?
Well, it's a strange role that Turkey is playing, because the Americans have gone in and said that they shouldn't be doing what they're doing, that the impact on insurance is not meant to cover what Turkey is doing with it. But if anything, the number of tankers in the Bosporus has now increased from about 21 to 28, and it's not affecting Russia as much. It's more Kazakhstan oil. So it's a strange response by Turkey. I mean, Turkey is producing the excuse that uninsured tankers, or not properly insured tankers, if there is an accident in the Bosporus, it will be very difficult for them. So, but that problem existed before. So I don't fully understand why Turkey is doing what it's doing. It definitely is not relenting at the moment. Maybe, as usual, Turkey is looking for some kind of return, that they created a problem and they blame it on others, and now they might expect some kind of return before they change their mind and do something different.
I mean, everything Erdogan does now, one would think, Charles, over the next 6 months, is with the election of June 2023 as the main prism of every decision. How does this fit into that, do you think?
I think it does, because he internally within Turkey, he's portraying the image of a strong country that they can hold the world at ransom. They're taking these views everywhere. I mean, there is an increase in tension between Turkey and Greece. There is incursion of Turkey into Syria. The problem with NATO and the position of Turkey towards Finland and Sweden hasn't been resolved. So everywhere, Erdogan is taking a harsh view of things because it plays to his electorate. It portrays him as a strong leader, despite the fact that internally the economy is in tatters. I think that's perhaps the main reason. He wants to deflect attention of the electorate to external factors where he can create problems, and away from the economy, which he cannot control. At the moment, the economy of Turkey is not far from bankruptcy, and that will definitely affect him if he stays like that. But I'm not so sure it will work out. I mean, the polls in Turkey do not show that these actions by Erdogan really bolster his popularity. He still has problems. So we may see more rather than less of these actions.
Vibhuti, the big story over the weekend as well out of India is the Tata-owned Air India ordering some 500 jets from Airbus and from Boeing. What's does that tell you? What's your insights for such a huge economic spend at this particular time, when much of the world is the global economics of supply chain and inflation and so forth? It would seem an odd time to make such a big commitment. Your thoughts on that?
Well, Tata has very recently taken over Air India, though they were the initial, the owner of the very own nationalized air company which is the Air India. So they are have a lot of old fleet. So they want to replace, given it's now being privatized and Tata has taken over. So it's not only for the new air traffic. Definitely India is witnessing with higher disposable income, with higher economic growth. People are traveling more. People are able to afford, to travel by air, which was so far, being done through railways or through road transport. So it's increase in the air traffic. Plus, there is a need for them to replace some of their very old fleet as well. So it comes from there. And given Tata has diversified,
and this is in some ways much more about internal travel rather than international travel.
It's going to be both. We are witnessing, post-COVID, the air traffic is back to pre-COVID levels, and people are traveling. Not only domestic travel, but also international travel is also on the rise. So yes, it's going to be both.
We saw news over the weekend as well that China, the main airports in Beijing are back to 70% operational capacity after the recent loosening up of the COVID restrictions there. I wanted to get your views on what India looks when they see President Xi in Saudi Arabia this weekend, meeting with all of the political leaders of the Gulf. India, how does that get covered in India? Is it seen as a positive? How does it, obviously given the great rivalry between India and China?
It is getting covered, but honestly, the focus for India right now is that India has assumed G20 presidency. So they're working on a whole lot of issues on whether it's cryptocurrency, digital, or even climate change for that matter, is one of the big areas of topic for under India's G20 presidency. So India is much more concerned. We are having very regular Sherpa meetings or, working groups meetings that have happened and are looking at on the energy transition aspects as well. So that is one of the big focus areas for India. And definitely they are kind of in knowledge of what's happening globally, but they are trying to push the voice of the global South, and not just for India, on all these important aspects of, as I said, energy transition, digital currency, cryptocurrency, or even as a matter of fact, all these global issues related to energy supply as well. So some of these things will be discussed in a lot more detail. And that's also one of the reasons why, we are also witnessing much higher air traffic in India. Just to respond to your earlier question, this year we will see a lot of people visiting India from across the globe for the various meetings as part of the G20 or the Clean Energy Ministerial meeting next year.
Let's just take the survey question, which I wanted to sort of put to Charles next. Russia said over the last few days that it may cut oil production in response to the G7 price cap, and that a decision on Russia's response will be made within the next days, which we expect this week. What will they announce? Will Russia announce that they will cut oil production? They no cut? Or will they keep the threat dangling, keep us all guessing? Will they? So Russia's announcement this week, will Putin follow through with his threat and cut oil production, no cut, or keep the threat dangling? What's the views? And we'll post that on social media today. Charles, your thought as to where Russia is at vis-a-vis absorbing these continuous sanctions and now the sanction on the around oil exports?
Well, so far these have had no impact. Russia is coming out of it reasonably well. As you said earlier on, it continues to trade. The price of oil at which it sells its oil to India and China hasn't changed at all. Exports are not going down, and we are going to see, as far as I am concerned, the downturn in the global economy, the recession that is coming, the rates that are coming, have all been factored in. From now on, we're going to have factors coming in that will probably raise the oil price. Like China's demand is expected to grow by another 3 million barrels of oil per day by early next year. The impact on Russia's exports might be felt a little bit. There might be a reduced export from Russia. All of these factors, the new factors, are pointing towards increased oil prices. So I think in answer to your question earlier on, Russia doesn't really need to do much. It just needs to wait and see and carry on. Apart from, I was reading earlier on today that the trade in black market oil is increasing, and Russia has bought all these tankers. That it's over 100 tankers to move oil into the global markets. All of these things, I believe, are helping Putin continue his exports and his revenues, and I don't see him in need to do anything drastic at this stage, unless there is a huge increase in the oil price and the cap starts hurting him, which at the moment is not. I don't see him needing to do anything drastic other than keep mentioning these things, keep dangling the threat, as you said, and causing a bit of concern everywhere else, but not without the need to do anything about it.
Charles, just on the other point, the oil, obviously, that we've seen gas go through that journey earlier in the year. Gas was cut off. Gas is now multiple other sources are being sought. We've saw some deals between Germany and Qatar announced in the last week or so. Do we end the year, Charles, with any sort of tangible change in the outlook for gas development in the East Med or in Central Asia, coming through Turkey into Europe? Or how do you see the gas story ending new gas development, ending 2022?
It's not going to happen, Sean, simply because Europe is still not giving the right messages. Europe, even though Germany has signed a longish term contract, 15 years, And even though Denmark has gone back into gas production, something that it was trying to get out of, I don't see any big changes simply because Europe keeps saying that they only need gas to 2030. After that, their target is to reduce it. And they have actually, I don't know if you noticed, but in gas consumption in Europe, year on year, has gone now down 25%. It has been replaced. I mean, they keep trumpeting that, but it's not an achievement. It's a problem simply because that gas has been replaced by coal and lignite, and that may stay like this for a while until Europe changes its tune. And if Europe does not come out openly and say that they are happy with long-term contracts and European utilities commit to buying gas for the longer term, I don't see any change in production. I mean, the companies in the East Med have gone on record saying that they are willing to do something, but only if they can secure long-term contracts in Europe. Europe is not doing that, it's discouraging that. Still, I believe that sooner or later Europe will have to change its tune. Countries within Europe are already changing their tune. It may take a while before we see the result of that. But the problem I see is that because Europe itself, European Commission, is not changing this tune, we are going to run into another gas crisis by next year, and probably not, and probably after that too, before we see a change of heart. Because the things they think they will achieve to get rid of gas and replace it with something else are not happening. This idea that hydrogen is going to come and help Europe by 2030, it's not happening yet. The idea that by investing huge amounts into wind energy, it's going to help by increasing renewables, it's not happening because climate change is affecting wind energy. It's unreliable, it's not performing to the level expected. So all in all, Europe is in trouble, will get into more trouble next year, and I think it will have to reassess its position towards gas, because gas is the answer. And as you said, there is gas in the East Med. I mean, the surplus gas in the East Med can supply Europe with 25 to 30 BCM per year for 25 years, a significant amount.
That's a significant amount.
But it's not being developed because of these wrong messages, confusing messages from Europe.
Vibhuti, just a closing thoughts from you and where that leaves India and Asia when Europe is now going to be so aggressively competing in the LNG markets. Obviously, this winter is pretty much over in terms of from point of view of purchasing new supply, but next winter is the big one, as Charles mentioned earlier. What does this competition for global LNG mean for India and Asia?
India, that way, is kind of protected in the sense that our dependence on gas is only to the extent of, in the total energy mix, its share is just 6%. Though we had targeted it to increase to 15%, but clearly because of the higher prices, we have seen for a lot of sectors, government kind of coming up with restriction in terms of especially the CGD, which was the second highest consumer of gas in India. Fertilizer is the biggest consumer of gas in India. For that, there are alternatives being explored, but it's a long time we have those alternatives in place. So definitely fertilizer will be a key consuming sector for gas in India. And as a result, there are being, I think what is being done is further to push exploration of our own gas in India. I think that's one of the results. So we don't have a lot of domestic gas potential. There are difficult fields which are left now. So government is trying to give the right kind of price signals by increasing the gas prices for those difficult domestic gas fields. So I think it's going to be a combination of trying to ramp up your own domestic gas and reduce reliance on LNG. But where India was heading towards was thinking that they're going to increase gas share substantially from 6 to 15% in the next 4 to 5 years, but that's not going to happen.
Okay. Well, we'll leave it there for today. As we said at the beginning of our half hour together, there's the result of the survey. We'll post it online now. The general view that Putin will keep the threat dangling of oil production cut. The big threat to the Western economies, of course, to keep that inflation sort of cauldron bubbling. But of course, that impacts all the countries of the world, including India and other more vulnerable countries, to absorb that higher oil price into 2023. But nonetheless, the longer this conflict goes on in Ukraine, the longer energy, the cost of energy and the threat of energy supplies will remain. And you would think an elevated energy premium, a war premium, will remain in the price going into 2023. The markets, as we said, Brent trading today a little bit up, 76.58, but still firmly in the 70s for the first time since January. And we end the year more or less actually lower than where we started it. And we'll see where that goes into the final weeks of the year. Thank you so much, Charles. Really appreciate it. And Vibhuti, also great to have your insights this morning. Have a great week, everybody. We'll be here at 10:30 UAE time every morning. All the best. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.